Hello everyone, and after a very month hiatus, we are back with another update for BEARZERKERS, this time in the month of April 2016. We've just put out an update early this week, version 0.2.0, and I'll talk a little bit more at the end of the video about the other work we've been doing besides BEARZERKERS. To start off with, I'm just going to cover some things that affect both of the game modes, and we're going to start here with an increased character size in the games. They're around 35% bigger than they used to be. Their actual colliders are the same size, so you can make it through the same gaps, you'll be getting blocked off by the same things, etc. It's just purely a visual change that means you're more visible from a distance, even closer up, the character silhouettes are more pronounced, and we feel that this is a solid change going forth to make all the action more clear as the game gets more and more zoomed out, so you can sort of keep track of everything going on. Also with the critters, we've introduced a new character, the Badger. We've been working on this character for a few months on and off, with concept art being completed a while ago by Anthea Wright, modeling and sculpting by myself, and texture work by Parisa. And eventually, much like the other characters, it'll have a whole unique set of animations to go with it as well. And we've also replaced the old meaty gibs that would appear once the player was killed previously, where hunks of the critter would bounce around and leave bloody splashes. Interesting note is that those hunks that were flying around, those pieces of meat from the critters, were actually the last assets remaining from our original Pandemonium prototype, as they were pieces of the original armadillo that we had not gone around to replacing, thinking that we were always going to invoke a new system, and here it is. So now, when players die, they splash, but it's a coloured sort of painty blobs that fly about, coloured to the player colour, so you can see who's been eliminated where, whether it be in Gauntlet or Hunt. And I feel like it's just adds a lot of nice visual feedback to the map, letting you know where everyone has been taken out, and a lot of different splashes of colour rather than just the deeper red. The textures are also different, so that helps, but I feel like it's quite a nice change. We're also looking into, once our modifier system is up and running, hopefully in the next update, there will be an option to turn these paint splotches back into a sort of more blood-like thing for all the players if people want that when they're playing. We also have a new hint system that appears during loading screens. There are generic hints which appear everywhere, I think, including just when you're loading menus, and that will be just stuff which broadly applies to the game, such as the advice that pandas are bears, because we do receive that bit of feedback a lot that pandas aren't in fact bears, but they totally are. I think I've said that a few times in some blogs here, but then we have more hunt-specific tips or more Gauntlet-specific tips depending on where you're loading into. There are only a few of them in there for now, but we're going to be filling that out as the updates go on and more releases come out. Now let's get on to some more hunt-specific changes. And we're going to start here with the rage mechanic for bears. So previously, the rage mechanic was simply that if you were being the furthest player away from the bear for a certain amount of time, the bear would switch targets to you, chase you down, and once within a certain distance, would chase you as per normal, but could then chase other targets if they got closer, or the rage mechanic started to build up and he locked onto another target. Now, the bear will actually chase you down when raged, but will not break rage. Like, he will slow down once he gets close to you, but he will stay focused on you for a number of seconds until it can release and chase other targets. So it doesn't immediately snap out and perhaps hit other players who are nearby with very little warning, as it could do previously, where it appeared that he would be chasing the other player, then suddenly it would snap, kill the other guy, and it didn't feel fair. So we've changed that. Those numbers are probably going to be tweaked in the future, but that's how they are now. The other major change to the bear rage mechanic is that not only will the bear chase you down if you've been the furthest player away from the bear for, say, 10 seconds or so, if the bear has been chasing a single target for 10 seconds, let's say, perhaps it's 8 seconds, I'm not sure on the exact number at the moment, but if a bear has been chasing the same target for a certain amount of time, it will switch targets to the player that is currently the one who has been away from the bear for the longest. So they don't have to have filled up their rage meter. It just happens that the bear has been chasing this poor other guy for so long that he's going to switch targets. And that was always the original intention of the rage mechanic, was to stop the bear from just chasing this one player down while everyone else could just go off and do whatever and plan the other player's demise. So I feel like this fits a much nicer balance for the intended use of the rage mechanic. Another fairly major mechanical change for Hunt is that we've changed the way in which power-ups will spawn in. Previously, they were purely on a countdown timer between each power-up, and while that countdown timer between the power-ups still does exist and will be able to be modified in the options once we have that menu in, we now also have a system that prevents there being the same number of power-ups as there are characters, or in some cases even more. So in previous builds you could have, at a certain point when you're down to 2 players, just constant flow of power-ups coming in. There'd be more power-ups getting spawned really than the players could use unless they were going super crazy with it. Now, if there are 2 players left, only 1 power-up can be spawned down onto the map at any one time. So it sort of creates this control over who has the power-up at any one point. And as also when there are 4 players, there are only 3 power-ups that can be at play. We're also going to be looking at giving an indicator as to where power-ups will spawn a number of seconds before they actually come down. So tied in with this current mechanic, it will allow players to actually plan out and try and take control of an area or move the other character away with the bear so that they can take the power-up once it spawns. And I think that'll be a really cool dynamic, but we've yet to test that out, and it's not yet in the update. As you may have seen from elsewhere in the video, we have some new icons to indicate when the player is being chased by bears. So down the bottom along the little badge area for the UI, Carissa has designed an icon to show it snapping shut over which player is being chased. And at the moment it shows one bear mouth for each bear, for each player that is being chased, but we just have the one texture there currently, though we're planning to have different bear styles for the growler bear, for the panda bear, etc. So you can see which bear is chasing who while the game goes on. And for the final large gameplay relevant changes we've made to Hunt, there have been a few major design alterations to a couple of the recent levels we've been making. So for Crystal Cargo, we have removed the large circular conveyor down the bottom of the map. We found with playtesting all the way back at PAX that people were just sort of focusing too much on that area of the map by being allowed to just sort of like circle around there. It affected the way that the bear dynamics played out too much with its difference between speeds there and on the dirts beside it. So it gave too much of an advantage to just generally staying in that area. So now that we just have this one vertical strip, it creates a much nicer flow from the bottom to the top of the map, and then later once we add the buttons to switch the direction of that, it should really change up the dynamics to give a fast groove transit through the center, but not give a reason to stay around there with how dangerous just that central track is when there were no dangers on that circular conveyor belt. And with Frozen Fjord, we found that people were having a lot of trouble seeing, especially with our placeholder art, that the 2 drop-off points to either side down onto the ice were actually drop-off points, and that there were barriers once they were down there. They couldn't just roll back up again. So we rotated the map, for starters, to more easily allow you to see the sides of the walls to let you know that there is a drop-off point there. We've also changed most of the walls within and around the map to expand the size of the lanes, contract other parts, just generally try and create a nicer flow through the center and the sides of the map. And we've been playtesting a lot and think it's a lot of fun, so it's probably going to stay pretty close to where it is right now from here on. And the final change, which is a bit of a smaller one, is that in Harvest Hell, there was the central part of the map that power-ups spawned down onto on these little sort of paddles that hung out from the center and moved with the rest of the grinder unit. We've expanded those small paddles to be larger grates that essentially fill up that whole central area, so you can roll onto it and you won't sort of slip off it, and it will be much less awkward to move around that central part of the map. At the end of rounds of Hunt now, the player who wins is made invulnerable, so no sliding bears can kill them. The camera will actually zoom in to the character. We're planning to have a lot more done with that there, where they'll have an actual like victory stance and animation once all those are in. Also, all dynamic parts of the level, such as the rotating floor in Twisty Tunnel or the grinders in Harvest Hell, etc., will stop moving, so that will stop things like you see here where the player gets stuck in the grinder Instead, all those things will shut down and you'll get a nice clean shot of the winning player. On to Gauntlet, and let's start with some things that have changed rather than the new additions. Primarily, this comes down to the Gauntlet abilities. Charge, which previously gave you extra charge nodes for ability use and also reduced cooldowns, now only gives you extra charge nodes. And to follow up with that, a lot of the other abilities have had their cooldowns reduced as a result of that, because you'll never get them to get lower otherwise. With Blink, we've actually gone even further, and the Blink skill has a much larger range at its first level than it used to, but that stays the same through every level, and instead the recharge times for Blink get faster, because we found that generally while using Blink you wanted to sort of move a fixed distance, and if you were leveling up that as you played through the level, it actually became hard to predict where you were going to end up each time you used Blink. And the distance we settled on felt like a nice happy ground for that. And what you really wanted to do with Blink was Blink a lot, or as often as you could. So we figured high levels of Blink, be able to use it more often. So that's what we've done there. And as I said, the other abilities have had their cooldowns reduced in general, just to compensate for the fact that Charge no longer reduces cooldowns. We also have 2 new abilities for Gauntlet for testing. And let's start with Barrier. So Barrier currently, each level of it gives you an additional protective layer of shield around you for a certain amount of time, allowing enemies to hit you, bounce off with you unharmed. So at level 5, you will have 5 layers of that barrier. You'll be able to be hit 5 times before actually being killed. It's not working as best as it can at the moment, to be honest. We think it's a lot of fun as we released it, but we feel like there are a few changes that need to be made. Primarily, at the moment, it doesn't actually apply to all obstacles and enemies. Slammers will still kill you while you're using it. Other things like laser grids and so forth have no reaction at all, and we're planning some changes for that you can view on our Trello. But the biggest thing that I feel like it kind of needs to make its intended purpose more useful is to sort of shunt obstacles away once they hit you. So once they touch you, your shield will explode and actually push them away, a bit like you're a pinball bouncer, which will pose a threat actually to allies, so you'll have to be more careful with how you use it. Even now with enemies hitting you and having to change direction, it can be a bit unpredictable for friends, but I think it'll be really satisfying to pull off those big shunt maneuvers once we get that skill working in there. And the other new skill is Crystal Cage. So Crystal Cage starts off with a fairly small radius, and what it does is anything caught within that radius is actually grabbed from beneath by these crystal cages. They're held for a limited time that gets longer as you level it up, and basically makes these enemies not do any damage to you for that amount of time and locks them in that one position. It's very powerful. It may need to be adjusted in the future, but for now we're really happy with how fun it is to use alongside your other skills. You will also notice, if you play in the latest build, that there is a new level to select when beginning Gauntlet. So this is Gauntlet Experimental. This is where a lot of our test changes are in there at the moment for new lane designs, just different ideas that will be expanded upon further. And it's quite unbalanced and a little bit harder. Maybe not so much as when we initially put the experimental tag on there. It is completable, it's lots of fun, but some things aren't fully working, such as the aforementioned laser grids not having any effect on your barrier ability or your grabber ability. But regardless of that, there are a lot of new fun things in there, such as these laser grids which move around. They're not like these red walls which will stop you. They will travel through you. You can be killed by them. Bears can go through them. You can blink past them, unlike you can with the other sort of more energy walls. We have a bunch of other cool things in there, such as these new green Cybears. So they're going to charge forward, stop, recharge their sort of boosters for a few seconds, then charge again, stop, rotate, and continue, unlike the other ones which are constantly moving. The visuals for representing that will be updated once we get the new fully completed rigs for the Cybears in there, which is one of the tasks for the next update. And we just have a lot of more interactive designs in general for each of the lanes, rather than just simply needing to get to the end of it. You'll see in this one, everything goes dark. Everyone needs to sort of huddle together and navigate using these fireflies as a light source and carry these fireflies through the end. There are other ones where you have to collect something before you get to the end to actually open up the gate to the next area, and cool stuff like that. You'll notice that this area is untextured at the moment, so it's a fully just testing based, no art, no frills, experimental mode as the name implies. And where we're sort of going with all this is that you'll know our previous Gauntlet thing, it's sort of got this appearance of like these floating islands, this landmass above the sky, which itself was an unfinished look that we never got around to fully completing. And the reason for that is we've actually changed direction with where Gauntlet is going to go visually, and there's a lot of work going on in the background for that. So basically it's going to be this sort of lab-like facility that is producing these machines, these robot bears and so forth, and it's going to have a sort of a sci-fi clean laboratory look that you're going through, and these are specific challenges and things that you're getting through to the bosses and challenges of these areas. That stuff's still very heavily work in progress, so we're not going to see a lot of new art for the environment come into Gauntlet for a while until that stuff is started to be completed. But basically, going for that look, I feel like will mesh a lot better with where the Cybears and some of our other ideas were going with that. We're going to restyle things like the Slammers to better fit in with that new environmental concept. And we think that using this style will actually allow us to a lot easier sort of create these modular pieces that we can slap pieces together to create even more varied designs within each lane. So we're pretty excited about where that will go in the next few months. And our final little note for Gauntlet is something that's been a long time coming, in that the little level up bubbles, the things that display which skill you've got selected, they no longer overlap between each player, so they'll actually bump themselves out of the way if other players' UIs or the actual players get in the road. So you'll actually be able to see what's going on, which is certainly, I hope, going to be helpful for a lot of new and old players alike for that stuff. And that's a wrap, at least for the changes that we've brought in with this update. I know that there's been a large gap between the update videos, but for any changes you want to know about since those, we do have the Trello board I'll show here and link to that shows all of our previous changes with the last few builds. This isn't the development board, this is the one that shows all our past updates that have actually gone up to Steam. We've also got the change logs on Steam itself, which I'll link to as well and just show here. Now, to cover what else we've been doing and the basic reasonings of why exactly. So, long story short, BEARZERKERS isn't making a huge amount of money for Wiregrass at the moment, and to sort of just keep some money in the bank and keep going through and keep running as a company, keep able to finish BEARZERKERS and do other stuff beyond that, we've taken on some contract work, both for that reason and because some of the creative stuff we've been doing with this has been really cool and interesting. And I'm going to start with some of the work you guys have seen before, but we've been doing more of, and that is work for Education Queensland and part of their new focus on trying to teach primary school students to code. And the latest project we've helped with them with that is Breaky Blocks. Now, Breaky Blocks is very much a breakout styled game. You've got a paddle hitting against the bricks, and there are a number of power-ups, and we just really focused on trying to make it as fun and simple as possible. And it's sort of an endless breakout style game where it will keep going, and we just have put a lot of polish and love into the look of the game. There's a possibility of maybe doing more with this project in the future, we're not sure yet, but we'll definitely be helping out later on in the year with some more projects, and we'd love to show that stuff off to you guys as well when we've completed it. Some other work we've been doing is some contract work for an artist, Anthony Lister, in collaboration with the Studio 6040 in a VR app for Cardboard on both iOS and Android that allows you to look around and browse some of Anthony Lister's art in a virtual space, animated and alive around you. And that was really cool to get going. You can check that out on Google Play and the App Store under Lister VR. The final bunch of things we were doing is we had the chance to work with the HTC Vive pre-release thanks to a local friend and developer, Mark Schramm. who had some dev kits and allowed us to do our own things with them. So both at the Global Game Jam earlier this year and at another jam held at Mark's house, we created a few little VR prototypes that we had a lot of fun making and playing with. This was Space Conductor VR, where it's basically sort of like a flight control-esque control system, but in 3D, where the idea was that you were going to be navigating trade routes between planets in space. We got about as far as drawing the trade routes, but even that had a nice satisfying feel and look to it. That was done over a few days. And then also at the Global Game Jam, we worked on a game called Eldrinth, where we took the biggest space we possibly could with the HTC Vive. It was actually larger than they recommend using, so it was complaining a little bit, but we forced it into it. So this is by no means a practical project, but the basic idea being that you were walking around exploring this strange crypt after you teleport yourself in through your basement, like candle ritual that you've got going on there. And we were using the space in a non-Euclidean way, so as you were moving around the space, turning around, going through different corners and such, the world would change around you. So trying to make as much use of our limited space that you could actually walk around as possible to create infinite areas. And we created a few of them over a few days. We worked with not just the people from Wildgrass, but also those from Budgetsoft and Hazard Facts helped out with the project, and it was a big collaborative thing, and we had a lot of fun. We created slightly bit more polished versions, but basically for both this and the other VR thing, we were seeing what we could do with the hardware, and if it would be possible, we could get some dev kits ourselves. That hasn't worked out quite yet, and the focus is definitely on completing BEARZERKERS for the moment. But it was a lot of fun. We don't have any available downloads for that, but I can show you all the footage and link to playthroughs of that elsewhere on other people's YouTubes. And that's about it for this update video. Hopefully we'll be able to get this stuff out to you a lot sooner than the last gap we just had. Hopefully explaining some of what we're doing there. But that is by no means an excuse for the gap that we've had with proper updates for you guys. So we'll be trying as hard as we can to get push out for both content and video updates out for everybody. And there are some exciting things on the horizon for our current log of stuff we're working on to get to the next patch, which I encourage everyone to go and have a look at on our Trello board at trello.com/lots of alphanumeric characters that I'll link in the description below. Alright, thanks everybody for watching. Hope you're enjoying BEARZERKERS or enjoying these videos, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.